You are already that. You've heard that sentence so many times, it has stopped making sound. It arrives, gets recognized, gets filed. The mind nods. Something in you knows it's pointing at something real, and nothing changes. That's not a failure of understanding. That's something more specific and more uncomfortable. The sentence landed. The understanding is there. What's also there is the one who received the understanding and is still waiting for it to mean something different than it does right now. Shankaracharya saw exactly that waiting. He called it the structure of bondage, not its content. He wrote about it in the 8th century. The text is called the Aparokshanubhuti. The title itself is the entire teaching. Aparoksha means direct, immediate, without intermediary. Anubhuti means experience. Knowledge of the absolute won't do it. Understanding won't do it. Direct experience. The kind that leaves no one standing outside it, observing. He begins the text with a simple instruction. One who possesses discrimination between the eternal and the transient, dispassion toward the pleasures of this world and the next, control of the mind and senses, and an intense longing for liberation. Such a one should contemplate this teaching. Discrimination, dispassion, control, longing. He's describing someone who has already done the work. Years, maybe decades, of practice. Someone who has studied, who has sat in meditation, who has cultivated discernment. Someone who already knows the difference between the permanent and the passing. He's describing you. And what does he say to that person? What does he offer someone who has all of that? He says, now investigate. Investigate. Ask the question that all the practice was preparing you to ask. And notice what happens when you ask it without expecting an answer you already know. Who am I? How did this world arise? What is its substance? These are not philosophical questions, not exam questions with correct answers. They are pointed directly at the one asking them. The investigation doesn't produce knowledge. It dissolves the one who thought it needed knowledge. But here is where the mind does something very subtle. It hears investigate and turns it into a new practice, a new technique, a new thing to do correctly, to do better, to eventually do well enough that something happens. The mind takes every pointer towards stillness and converts it into motion. Watch it happen. Right now, somewhere in the listening, there's a part of the mind already organizing this, filing it, deciding whether it's useful, constructing the version of you that will have done this correctly. Shankaracharya saw this too. He describes it with devastating precision. The ignorant one identifies with the body. The wise one identifies with the self. 2 words, ignorant and wise. The mind immediately wants to know which one it is. Comparing, measuring, asking, have I crossed the threshold yet? That movement of comparison is not the investigation. It's the thing the investigation is supposed to see through. There is a silent assumption running beneath all of this. It has been there so long, it no longer feels like an assumption. It feels like the shape of reality itself. The assumption is this, that there is a moment coming, a future moment different from this one, in which the recognition will finally happen, in which the gap will close, in which you will stop being someone who understands and become someone who knows. The practice, the studying, the sitting in silence, all of it organized around that moment. Even the disillusionment, the fatigue, the moment of I give up, all of it still pointing toward that future moment as the goal. Even surrender gets turned into a strategy. Shankaracharya cuts through this without softness. Liberation is nothing but the recognition of what already is. Nothing new is created. Sit with that, not as encouragement, as a surgical observation. Nothing new is created. The liberation you are waiting for, the understanding you want to finally arrive, cannot be built, accumulated, or achieved. Because if it could be built, it would be another object, another thing that appears, another thing that, having appeared, will one day disappear. What Shankaracharya points to is not an achievement. It doesn't arrive when you've finally done enough. The self illumines everything, not as an external light, but as the very ground of perception itself. Not as something you find, as what was always already doing the finding. Think about deep sleep. Not a spiritual state, just sleep. The mind goes quiet. The commentary stops. The seeker disappears entirely. And yet something remains. Something that registers the silence, that knows the sleep happened. Shankaracharya points to that something. It wasn't created by the sleep. It was simply no longer obscured by the noise. This is where something in the listening might want to turn away. Because if that is true, if recognition is not a future event, but something present right now beneath the search itself, then the search cannot continue in the same way. And the mind that has organized itself around the search, that has built an entire identity out of being a sincere seeker, doesn't know what to do with that. The seeker without a destination is not at peace. It's disoriented. It doesn't feel like liberation. It feels like loss. Shankaracharya anticipated this too. The practice removes the veil. But what was beneath the veil was never covered. The veil is real for the mind. The years of practice were not wasted. They were the mind exhausting its own strategies until it became still enough to notice what was there before strategy began. The practice removes the veil. It doesn't create what's underneath. You were not building towards something. You were clearing away what obscured something that was never absent. And still the mind asks, then why don't I feel it? Why, if awareness is always present, if the self is the ground of everything, if nothing needs to be created, why does it still feel like something is missing? That question is worth sitting with, not answering. Sitting with. Because the question assumes that feeling it would look a certain way. That recognition would arrive as an experience, warm, expansive, unmistakable, that you would know, without doubt, that you had arrived. But Shankaracharya doesn't describe liberation as an experience. He describes it as the end of a misidentification. The ignorant one takes the body for the self. The wise one does not. He doesn't say the wise one feels different. He says the wise one is no longer confused about what they are. That's a much quieter thing than the mind has been imagining. Much quieter, much closer. Right now, as these words appear, there is something that is aware of them, not the mind processing them. That's visible. That's an object. Something prior to the processing. Something that doesn't come and go with thoughts, doesn't strengthen with good meditation sessions, doesn't weaken when the mind is busy. It requires no effort to be present. It is not something you have to locate. The looking for it is itself appearing within it. Shankaracharya describes it as self-luminous, known by itself, without needing a second thing to illuminate it. The self is self-evident. It does not depend on anything to be known. The mind wants a method to reach this, a final technique, a last instruction, but there is no distance between what is looking and what is being looked for. The gap that the seeking has been trying to close is itself an appearance. Within what? Within the very awareness that the seeking was trying to find. If you've been listening to this and feeling a kind of quiet pressure, not discomfort exactly, but something that doesn't know what to do with itself, that may be the closest this kind of pointing can get. The mind running out of its usual moves. Shankaracharya ends the Aparokshanubhuti without consolation, without a promise of what comes next. He says, "One who knows this is free, even while living. This is the supreme goal, beyond which nothing exists. Even while living, the breakthrough you were waiting for, the final veil, none of that. Now, in the middle of ordinary life, with the mind still doing what the mind does, with seeking still arising as a habit, the one who sees this clearly is already free. The question isn't whether you believe that. The question is, who is the one who still needs to believe it? If this channel is where you return when the usual answers stop working, there's another video here that may be worth your time, a different angle on the same thing that hasn't resolved yet. And if something in this is still moving, stay with it. Don't explain it to yourself too quickly. The explanation is what covers it.